Well, after that snafu, good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to Seed Connect webinar series. This Seed webinar series session will be recorded. It's going to be shared on our YouTube page, free of charge, of course. To enjoy the webinar live, we have some options. As you can see, we have an ASL interpreter pinned to the screen. If you cannot see the interpreter, please notify our Seed support staff in the chat. And if you prefer, at the bottom of your screen, you will see closed caption button. Select that if you would like the live captioning during the webinar. And it will also be added post-production onto the YouTube page. If you've requested a language interpreter in advance, there should be a globe at the bottom of your screen. Some people have said they see it. We are still trying to work on that option to make sure that it's available for you. And again, if it's not during the webinar, we're going to make sure that it's post-production captioned and you can select Spanish for that on YouTube. The format of this webinar is going to be a moderated guest panel. We ask that if you have questions, please hold them until the end. Place them in the Q&A box, which should be an option at the bottom of your screen, and we're going to monitor that box and answer the questions at the end. If you have a comment or a question, please use the chat feature to speak with our Seed support staff, okay? All righty, so the title of this webinar is Building Family Communication. Communication is perhaps the most powerful tool that we have as humans. Communication helps inform and engage each other through sharing thoughts and ideas and establishing and building strong relationships. In addition, effective communication ensures that accurate information is shared, expectations are met, and trust is established. The mission of this webinar is to share an open and honest conversation about building communication within the family. The panelists will discuss the value of parents learning sign language to communicate and what happens and how it feels when there's a disconnect or breakdown in communication. Our panelists come from the California School for the Deaf in Fremont, whose mission is to provide a visual learning environment and strong partnerships with families and communities. CSD is a public school that supports deaf children of any hearing level using bilingual ASL and English curriculum. They have an early childhood education program for children 0 to 6 and an elementary, middle, and high school program. CSD is an international leader in bilingual and multicultural education while meeting state standards for curriculum and assessments through the 12th grade. Direct instruction is given in ASL and English, allowing for multiple language opportunities and peer interactions. At CSD, students experience language opportunities, develop an appreciation for diversity, and lead fulfilling lives. So I'd like to welcome our guest panelists, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. And so straight out of CSD Fremont, I'd like to introduce Jonte. Could you introduce yourself, tell us what grade you're in, and a little bit about yourself? What do you want us to know?
So my name, scoot over a little, thank you, so they can see me. So my name is Jonte. This is my sign name, JB. I am a senior, and I have 3 sisters, and they're all hearing. My parents are hearing as well. My favorite activity, what I enjoy doing, I like to go camping with my family or with my friends to kind of just like get out of the city. The language that I use at home, mostly I use English to speak with my parents, because sometimes we have a hard time understanding what each other say. especially if it's in English. So sometimes I have to read what they want to say. The language my family uses.
Oh, could we slow down a little bit?
So my family, the language that they use is English. So when I started California School for the Deaf, I was 14 years old.
All right. And how about Destiny?
Hello, my name is Destiny. I have 3 sisters and 1 brother, and they are all hearing. And I also forgot to mention I'm also a senior. And my favorite activity is to go to the lake, Tahoe, with my family. I enjoy that very much. And at home, we use sign language, seal, and then also we write. The language my family uses is English. And I joined CSD when I was 12 years old.
Awesome. And how about our next guest, Nora?
So my name is Nora. I'm 16.
6th grade.
I'm sorry, excuse me, 6th grade. I have 2 brothers. One's hearing, one's deaf. Both of my parents are deaf. And what I like to do, I like baking. And the language used at home is ASL and English.
Awesome.
And I joined CSD in kindergarten.
Awesome. Okay. And last but not least, Angel.
So yes, my name is Angel. I'm in 7th grade. I have 5 brothers with me and 1 sister, and they're all hearing. I am the only deaf one. My parents are also hearing. My favorite activity is going out fishing. The language I use at home is English and Spanish. Spanish with my parents and English with my siblings. My family, the language that they use is both English and Spanish. And I joined CSD at the age 18 months. So 1 year and 6 months old. And I went to for so many years, and then I left, and then I came back in the 5th grade. So the interpreters are switching right now.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing so much about yourselves. So you shared a little bit of some of the questions that we were going to ask during our during the webinar. So I want to go through it again, and I want a show of hands of how many have at least one parent who uses signs at home. Great. Okay. At least 2 parents who sign at home. And then how many parents, and then how many of you have parents or extended family, aunts, uncles, who use sign language? Okay, great. All right, one more, a few more. How many of you have parents who are hearing? How many of you have parents who are deaf? Okay. And then how many of you are the only person in your family who is deaf or hard of hearing? Okay. Great. So I wanted to do that so we can see a show of hands, so we can see the demographics of the different types of families that we have with children who are deaf and hard of hearing. So I want to start with, let's start with Angel. When we talk about communication, before I said it's about expressing yourself, knowing what someone else wants. How would you describe good and effective communication in your family? What does that look like?
Well, for me, I think we have good communication when we understand each other, when we feel we're not, we might speak and misunderstand each other, and then we can smooth things out because, if we're able to have fun together all the time, that's good communication.
Good. How do you handle miscommunications?
Well, for my parents, if we have a misunderstanding, then we'll switch to English. Or we'll use the phone and we'll type back and forth on text, or I'll show them the message. For my brothers, if English isn't going to work, we may use Spanish, or again, we'll use the phone.
Okay, great. And the same questions for Jonte. How would you describe good and effective communication, and how do you handle miscommunication?
Yeah, so if we have a misunderstanding, usually I'll have to speak a little bit more slowly or ask people to repeat themselves, or I can also text back and forth with my parents. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. And the same question for Destiny.
All right, well, communication at home really looks like with my parents and my siblings, it's pretty surface communication. We don't necessarily talk about deeper topics. And so if we have a miscommunication as well, sometimes we'll just drop it. Or sometimes, again, we'll type and we'll show each other what we mean.
Okay. And then Nora, what's good and effective communication for you with your family, and how do you handle miscommunications?
For me, communication kind of looks like it's pretty smooth. It's not that hard for me to understand my family. If we do have a miscommunication, typically what happens is sometimes I'll just ask my parents to repeat themselves or vice versa, or we'll just sign things again. Or we can text each other. I'll text my brother sometimes if we have a miscommunication.
Okay. Older brothers, right? They're the best. Okay. So what is the greatest challenge to language access? And I asked that of our children with hearing parents. So let's see your hands again with hearing parents. Great. So if you guys can answer that question, what's the greatest challenge for language access for you guys at home? Start with Destiny.
Let me think about that. I think the hardest challenge, what's the hardest communication challenge I have?
Yes.
Okay, I would say sometimes with my father, it can be hard to communicate when we're trying to understand each other. He won't understand, and he can become frustrated, and because we're trying to say things over and over. And sometimes I'll just say we need to just do this more slowly, or communicate more slowly, and things can get emotional. And so for me, it can feel like hearing people can just get too angry more quickly when they can't understand, when we can't understand each other. At school, I use sign, and then I'll also use voice and sign for my dad. And then at Fremont too, we're using voice off and signing. So, but if I use voice off with my dad, he can get really frustrated. And so I have to turn my voice back on. And so that can be a really significant challenge, code switching.
Okay. And Jonte, same with you. What's the greatest challenge?
So communication can be really hard. I think the hardest thing is to understand my parents, understand what they're saying, my sisters. I really have to kind of study and try to understand what they're saying. So for example, my dad will say something like, go get yellow monster. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Yellow monster? I don't understand what that means. And then I have to look at it again. Yellow monster. I don't understand what that is. And I'm trying to lip read. And he says, okay, yellow monster. I'm like, oh, I understand what he's saying. And so I'll have to try to lip read and understand exactly if we're going to a family event, for example. Again, really trying to catch things with lip reading and without sign language. Or sometimes I'll just ask my sister who's sitting next to me and ask what someone said, and my sister will be happy to kind of speak. She'll speak up sometimes and help me communicate. But I can have a hard time understanding what everybody is saying.
Right. I'm confused as well. Can you tell us what is yellow monster?
It's actually, it's for like serving food, actually. It's actually when they have to, it actually meant he was saying mustard, but it looked like monster. But he was actually saying mustard. Can you please pass the mustard? And so that's what he was saying. But again, it's those misunderstandings.
Awesome. That's actually a really good point. We've done many webinars in the past, and there's this misconception that all deaf people can read lips. And so that's a really good example of where there's a miscommunication with the expectation, oh, you'll know what I'm saying, you can read my lips. So thank you for sharing that. Angel, how about you? What's the biggest challenge for language access at your home?
I had a lot of, one in particular, there was one time I was trying to have some fun with my family, and they're all hearing and, communicating with each other. And I wanted to go home, and the only, I had a friend of mine who was also playing a game at the same time. And my parents said that I couldn't go out and play the game with my friend. And I thought that was okay, but everybody was hearing, and I just wanted to go play. I was not having fun. I wanted to go play a game with my deaf friends, because I don't have a lot of deaf people in my life. So it was kind of boring being with my family. Or if I'm going to the doctor, I would sometimes prefer to just speak with the doctor directly, if someone's hearing or hard of hearing. And sometimes there can be misunderstanding. That can have some social anxiety as well. And it can be hard to relax and for things to go smoothly. And so sometimes I feel like people are talking too fast, or they'll talk loudly. All of those are challenges.
Great, thank you for sharing that. So I want to come to Nora. Nora, you're in a family of signers, yay. And so even though you all sign the same language, can you tell us what are some of your greatest challenges in your family for language access?
Well, for me, I think sometimes there can be still misunderstandings when we're discussing things and people are signing quickly, or sometimes that someone will mean something differently, or they'll say something off topic or mean something different than what we think they said, or we won't understand exactly what they said through sign language. And so sometimes we won't know a word that they're using, and that can be hard for me sometimes to understand, and we'll have to have a discussion about that. And so my brother, being hearing too, sometimes he'll say something to mom and I'll have to ask, hey, what did you say? And sometimes when we're together, when we're having communication and we're actually playing a game or being on the phone, all of those can be challenges.
Awesome. So every family does have some communication issues, which is obviously typical and normal. So Angel brought up something very interesting. He talked about being at family functions and really just wanting to kind of be with his friends, because he really doesn't have like an opportunity to chat with everyone there. How do each of you communicate at family functions? Do you have family members that sign? How does that work for you? And we'll start with Nora, because you have the signing family, one deaf, one hearing brother. So how do family functions work for you?
I think sometimes, which do you mean? Like, I mean, sometimes if there's some person who signs in the family, I can then sign with them. But if it's just a lot of people who are hearing, I could use my phone, or, you know, the caption you can use when someone's speaking, it will caption it for you. If people are playing games, sometimes, you know, I have like, you know, if there are three younger children, you know, we're just playing and we're laughing, and that's easy, and we can just enjoy ourselves.
Good. Destiny, how about you? How does communication work at family functions for you?
When we all get together as a family, and they're mostly hearing and laughing and having a good time, I can often sit by myself and I'll watch and just kind of be quiet. It's isolating. I understand some things if I can hear a little bit, but it's frustrating because I can't understand what people are saying. And it does feel, and I see them laughing, and I'll ask my dad sometimes, like, or my dad will come up to me and say that, you know, why don't you get involved? And, or I'll have to ask people what they said. And sometimes they don't tell me. So it's just frustrating. And, you know, sometimes I'll see my cousins playing and I'll want to join, and people will ask me, like, why don't you go and join everybody? But I don't feel like I want to, because I feel like it's just, you know, I'm kind of a unique person or unique kid, and I don't want them to get upset, or, you know what I mean? Like if I join that activity, and it's not a comfortable feeling.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Jonte, how about you? We're going to switch interpreters. Just hold on a second. And how about you, your communication?
So when my family gets together, they're all hearing. Well, you know, so they're all speaking, of course. And sometimes I'll want to join, you know, like maybe play a game and laugh, but I'm not going to understand what it is that they're saying because they're using their voices, and they rely on spoken language. And I can like use my phone and type something to them, and it would be like, oh, no, later, you know, and they'll still be playing the game or whatever. And that just continues. So I kind of feel like I don't have any fun in that situation. I mean, it would be nice if I could get involved with the game, but I wouldn't understand what they were saying. So I would feel alone and isolated. You know, I'm the only deaf person in the family. So I don't know what it is that they're saying. So it's incredibly frustrating in that situation.
Right. Thank you for bringing that topic up, Angel. I wanted to ask, and we'll start with you for our next question, is if you can use one word, how do you feel when your family talks among themselves without using any signs that involve you?
So I feel kind of like a ghost, like if I were never born. I mean, I was born, yeah, but everybody's talking and I don't know what's going on. I'm not included at all. I don't even feel like I'm here.
So your word,
It kind of like makes me think that they're all hearing, and yes, and I am not, right? And it kind of feels a little lonely and a little sad.
okay. And what would your one word be, Destiny? How does it feel when people are talking and they're not using signs around you and your family?
I feel like I'm not enough for them.
That's powerful, because we should all feel like we're enough. Thank you for sharing that. Jonte, how do you feel? Your word.
Again, I would feel like a ghost and very frustrated.
I wanted to have this webinar because I wanted teenagers. You guys hold nothing back, right? I thought it was important to hear from your demographic because you guys are honest and we have new families. I work at an institution that has children from 0 to 6. These parents are just learning either that they have a child who is deaf or hard of hearing. They are typically families who are all hearing. And I think it's important that they understand that there is something important about learning to communicate the way your child communicates. And so I think sharing those words and those feelings is very important for this webinar. I would like to shift and actually ask you for some advice. I think this is why our parents are here. They need to know, what should they do? How can they, lack of a better term, make you happy? What is the advice, or what would you like to see in your family? If you could make everything right for yourself right now, what would make your family click for you in the communication department? And we'll start with Angel. What do you want to see for communication in your family if it was perfect?
I would want them to sign, for one. I would want them to feel like they want me included, not to kind of like push me away. You know, and I would encourage my aunts and uncles and families to, you know, at least learn some sign. You know, like if you don't even know one word, you can't even fingerspell. I mean, I'll always be left out.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Jonte? What would the perfect thing be for communication? It's one word time.
I would want them to sign, yes. And that way we can have a similar experience and understanding each other, you know? Like if I spoke too, we'd have that similar understanding. So for them to sign, we'd have a better understanding, you know? So it would be great if they were to learn ASL, you know? And it'd be nice if it wasn't just the parents, but other members in the family also learned.
Exactly. And how about you, Destiny?
So perfect communication in my family, you know, my family would be doing the same types of things, happy, laughing, living their lives, but I would be involved. And I would have, you know, similar experiences as my friends who are involved with their families and have that connection. You know, they would understand what it feels like to be in my shoes, you know. I wish you know, they would. I mean, I tell them I can teach you, but you know, it just gets put off and put off.
Yeah. Okay, Nora. So being from a family who is right in there signing, I would like to ask you, because your family is kind of open. Everybody kind of knows what everyone's saying. For you, I'd like to ask you, do you and your siblings have like a secret sign language? Do you guys kind of, because you can't keep a secret in your family because everybody's reading signs. So do you guys have like a secret language?
No, we don't. We don't have anything like that.
Okay, so it's open season. Everybody knows. Okay. With that, I want to ask you also with Nora, because you are in a family who is signing, is there anything that would make it more perfect for you? Because I'm sure there are problems. You talked about miscommunications. Is there something that would make it more perfect?
Yeah. I would like everyone to have access to sign language for one. And, you know, we live in different areas, so it would be nice to know like regional signs also. So like we can have events and maybe people can come in and we'd be able to sign and there wouldn't be any miscommunication because everybody would have access to that communication and there'd be no language deprivation. And then we'd have good communications too, because we all care about one another, but it's a little hard to interact when you can't communicate with each other. But it would be nice to be able to do that and have direct communication with everyone and have them know what you're saying.
Yeah, that's very, very true. So in answering your question, and when you're answering your question, you're also talking about family being regional. We all have extended family. We don't all live together in the same state. You know, grandma might live in another, you know, part of the United States. I want to ask you how the development of the internet and social media has caused a change in the way you communicate with your family and with your friends. And we can start with Nora.
Do you mind repeating your question?
Absolutely. So we're talking about how your families are distant. How has the internet or social media helped you communicate?
You mean for me, it's, I mean, for me, I kind of just use like some apps and stuff like that. I'll like use text messaging apps, things like that to communicate. I mean, that's my main thing that I do. You know, like I'll send messages saying I love you or whatever, you know, chatting with my friends on my laptop, you know, that way I'm not just going crazy sitting at home doing nothing.
Good. And how about you, Jonte? Are you able to connect with family through the internet, social media? Has it helped you connect with family?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, kind of. I mean, because we text, we do use text. So I can actually understand what it is that they're saying because I can read it. So yeah.
Good, good, good. And Destiny?
So in regard to relations, feeling close to somebody, it's kind of like half and half. It's more like, for example, like, how was your day? How was school? You know, questions about like activities, what I do, you know, but we can like, we don't like text about everything, you know what I mean? But we do use it.
And Angel, same question. How has technology helped you in communication with your family?
Well, I don't really say it impacts much, but my brothers and my sisters are siblings. They use English, so I can understand them. But with my parents, you know, it's different because I don't really know Spanish. It's like, so I know ASL in English, so Spanish can be a little difficult. So it can be hard for me. And I'm not necessarily close with my cousins, aunts, and uncles, that part of my family. So I'm not exactly sure, you know, like much going on with them, especially when it comes to social media.
Mm-hmm. And can I ask you, is that because your family would be typing like Spanish or texting Spanish? Is that difficult for you?
Well, yeah, because I do have a lot of aunts and uncles in Mexico, and they just speak Spanish. So I can't necessarily understand that. But my aunts and uncles here also mostly speak Spanish, so I don't really understand them. They can, you know, do some stuff in English, you know, but yeah, I think, oh, sorry, I was just reading the comment. I'm sorry. Yes, yes. Sorry.
It's okay. Okay, great. We are going to be winding down and asking members to go ahead and start putting those questions in the Q&A box or the chat box. So I would like to ask each one of you, how has California School for the Deaf changed your life? We have Jonte, who started at 14, Destiny at 12. We have a kindergartner starter, and Angel, I think you started when you were what grade?
I was 18 months old.
18 months old. So I want to kind of start with Nora. How has CSD been for you in your life?
Well, before I started CSD, I was a little awkward with my sign language. I wasn't all that comfortable. I had access, but I just wasn't very fluent. So when I did join CSD, I had a lot more friends to communicate with. I didn't feel so alone, so I was much more eager to communicate. And I was able to pick up the language a lot faster. And I love being there. I've loved it ever since, you know, and I'm happy to go back every year. I just really love my school. So we're going to be switching interpreters again.
Interpreter. All right. So Angel, how's it been at CSD?
Well, I really grew up not really having my family, not really understanding me, or, you know, once a week we might have kind of growing up, just sort of growing up when I moved to, when my family ended up moving. And so I would end up being really emotional because I wasn't understanding the communication. And then I was in a mainstream program for a little while that was using Signed Exact English, or C. But again, English was really awkward with that program, and like C itself, again, is Signed Exact English. and it's not formal ASL. And again, I just was really struggling, wasn't really understanding that. And I was begging my parents that I wanted to go to a different school. And so, but my reading level has improved here, my math level, everything has improved academically since I came here.
Good. Yay. And Destiny, what about you?
Well, a while ago, when I grew up also in a mainstream school, and then it was more like it was in a classroom where they were using C as well, signed exact English, um, and I struggled with that too. I wasn't really understanding. It wasn't that bad, but socially, but I just wasn't a language, and so I was pulled out, um, I was pulled out from that, and I was getting behind with communication and learning. And so I just felt like I was getting behind in all of my classes. You know what I mean? Like I just felt like everything was at a kindergarten level. And so then that program closed, and then it was there were a lot of people where I felt like I wasn't understanding anything in sign language when I first started here. But it felt like I was kind of out in the real world all of a sudden, but I was learning a lot of things. I felt like I was getting a real education all of a sudden. Everything was new. I was getting new experiences. I was getting so much more information than I was accessing at the mainstream school. This school had a lot of opportunities and a lot of different things that we could do, and just so many different experiences. And it changed my whole entire social life changed at the same time too. I was able to make more connections, more meaningful connections with people at this school. And so I had more trust in people. I felt more comfortable. It changed everything.
And Jonte.
I felt this school changed me because when I was in a mainstream program, again, I was also in a mainstream program. And we were learning basics. Again, it was through C. We were signing exact English. And then I had to join in 8th grade. I joined in 8th grade. And there were the people here were signing here so fast, and I couldn't really understand anything at first. Everyone was signing so quickly, and I had to just try to catch whatever I can. Sometimes it was only a word at a time, but I picked everything up. And then as I started understanding everything and I started joining sports, I started getting more involved with the school, I felt much more connected, and I felt like I got much more support here. I felt there's so many events that were happening. So this is Destiny. And so the school too, I felt like I couldn't join the sports at the other school because I was deaf. And so with this school at CSD, I'm able to join because I have those opportunities to get involved in sports and get involved in volleyball and basketball. And so all of that changed for me too. I've just been able to get involved and go to all of the events. And I've become a leader in the school as well. This is Angel, and I also wanted to say, growing up, I was really trying to lip read, and again with C, that there's an emphasis on that, and I was using that almost every day, and I was begging my parents to try to kind of give me a hearing aid. I was trying to, I don't know, I thought it was normal, like for a deaf person to try to communicate in that way. And so I had gone back and forth in different hearing schools. And then at Howard, when I was 12, I was just really struggling. And I felt like they were being really strict, and they were always talking. I wasn't understanding what they were saying. Again, it was a hearing school. I was struggling within that school. And so I decided I really wanted to go to CSD, to go to a deaf school. And I wanted to be, I think, in a mainstream, I had been in a mainstream program, and I just felt like me being deaf, I just wanted to follow my own path. And so, I had been in the hearing world for so long and trying to find my place. And I just felt like I was getting more and more behind. And I just didn't feel, every day I went to school, I wasn't comfortable. This is destiny too. And can I add one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. So I also, with my family too, I think sometimes we'd be upset because like I wanted to sometimes feel I wanted to be hearing so bad. I would have a lot of hatred for myself because, when I would think, why am I deaf? Why was I born this way? And I didn't feel like I was good enough. And that's how I felt going to a hearing school. And I don't feel that way, and I was trying to lip read, like, it was
captions,
more like, I don't know, I felt like it was more like a game. I was trying to lip read all of that time, and I felt very isolated, and trying to do all of that myself, and using the phone, and then using captions, and there were always errors in them. And I was struggling a lot, and using hearing aids. I was speaking with my mom one-on-one. It was okay. I could pick up a little bit of that language, but then just again, feeling really negative about myself as a deaf person. And then I would overthink about things, about these messages, like which are true and which aren't. And when I came to Fremont, I could take my hearing aids off, and as I was, there were things that were bothering me that I just didn't really understand. When I joined Fremont, I didn't have to lip read here. But I did start to pick it up more and more. And then I became more happy I was so much happier when my parents decided to bring me here.
Quick clarification from the other ASL interpreter, a lot of talking about speaking themselves as opposed to lip reading, being forced to do speech therapy and being forced to use their voice.
Thank you for clarifying. So what I'm hearing is that being in an environment where you are getting access to language through signs was important to you, not only just to gather information, but to feel really good about yourselves, to be involved in your own families or in your own environment, and to be understood makes you feel really good that you have that access when you're in an environment where there is signing. I've also heard like no matter the situation, we kind of, as parents, may think that our children are understanding, and sometimes they're not, and we need to stop and take the time to recognize that maybe they need to take an extra step so that you do get that in-depth conversation, knowing what your child is feeling and how they want to be involved, but there's that barrier. So we do have a couple of questions in the Q&A box. So I'm going to go ahead and read through them. And the first one, a parent or a person wants to know, and we can do this by show of hands. Did your family already live in the Fremont area before you went to CSD? Okay. Whose family moved to Fremont so you could attend CSD? Okay.
Well, I wanted to add too that we had my parents also, they lived pretty far. And so we had some support, we needed assistance with homework and I'm sorry, I just missed that last part. Is there?
The staff was able to help, since if parents are far away, staff can help with homework and things like that.
So let me ask you, I think Lily will want to know, how many of you are residential students?
So California School for the Deaf has services for students that are all up north, and that's in San Luis Obispo. And they don't have to actually live in the Fremont area to send their children here. And if you do live far away, you can also join activities and go back home on the bus, and they have transportation. And that would be on Sundays and Fridays. So there is transportation. And if you live far away too, they, say like I live like about an hour. And so I don't have to go back and forth necessarily, and so, because, everything's expensive with gas. And so I can also stay there for the week, and then they come and pick up me after school on Friday, and then they can drop me back off on Sunday. I don't have to go back and forth every day.
So are you all residential students?
I'm here. Yeah, I am. This is John saying, yeah.
Good. All right. So we have a comment here. So I have a person who says, one, thank you for sharing your experience. Your stories are important and very powerful. Are there things your family do or could do that make activities and experiences more accessible for you? Like putting captions on TV at home or requesting interpreters for events? Nora?
Yeah, I think with my family, they always have captions on the TV. So, and for events, we always request an interpreter. I think, yeah, so that's normal.
Okay. We have a couple more. We're running out of time. Okay. So we have another attendee who wants to know, they're curious if you felt like the SEA experience were helpful for you understanding English, so writing and reading.
Nope. No, it was awful.
Okay. What can parents of young children do to help build their connection to being a deaf person? To help prevent the messages you experience, and to help their children feel proud of being deaf and hard of hearing. And let's start. Go ahead, Angel.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So I think just it's not just for parents, but I think I would recommend on, with deaf people too, like I feel like for them not to be alone, but they could put them together with a deaf mentor and see that they're not alone. They can also learn some sign, like they could help them, provide them with, so that they can feel more involved as well, so that they don't feel so alone. This destiny, now I feel proud of being deaf, and I feel happy with myself being deaf, and I'm more accepting of myself being deaf. So, I do feel like that now. And I think, what families can do to do that. What is that? Let's see. Can you clarify? I think, with kids, and even with babies, just teaching them, so that they can start picking that up early, so that in the future, telling them they're going to grow up and they're going to be smart and they're going to go out and meet a lot of people, and just starting that messaging really early. This is Nora, and I think that I think my advice to parents would be for deaf kids, to be teaching them how to sign, actually teaching the deaf kids how to sign, and then so the deaf children can be proud of who they are inside, and they don't have to feel like that being deaf means that they're just not important as a person, and that they are unique, and that they do have skills, and they can do everything that a hearing person can do. They just can't hear, and that's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are out of time for today. I think this panel discussion can go on and on. I would like another hour. I want to thank you guys for coming in and sharing your experiences. I think it's important for families to hear it. I want you all to know that I do not see ghosts. I see some wonderful kids who hopefully one day are going to grow up and rule the world. On behalf of SEED, I want to thank California School for the Deaf, Fremont, for lending us their students for today, for this real meaningful conversation. A special thank you to Lily Benedict for helping me create this panel of excellent students I see. And I'm sure you're all very happy about missing class, but it's time to go back. I'll see some of you this afternoon. So I want to thank all of our guests. I want to thank the attendees for coming. I really hope you got information right from the mouths of babes that will be helpful to you in your journey. So on behalf of SEED, I want to thank you all for attending and have a wonderful day. Bye. Thank you, interpreters. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.